Where soul remembers how to be limitless. Rebirthology, how do you rise so free? Limitless love, that's the code in me. Born from the ashes, polished in gold. I'm the story my ancestors told. Rebirthology, limitless living. Mind meets mystic, soul keeps winning. Limitless, 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 limitless. Rebirthology, where soul remembers how to be.
Well, welcome. That is the new Rebirthology opening for our talks here. And I'm not sure if we're experiencing some technical difficulties, but if you got a chance to see it, do I need to play it again? Because I want y'all to see what we've created here today. And I see one of my guests here. So we're going to have an amazing conversation today with some very influential people in the world. And really, this title will change from, religious deconstruction to more of, the recovery, focusing on the recovery, because this is not just about deconstructing. This is actually talking to esteemed authors, teachers, preachers, who are standing fully in the marketplace in their spiritual gifts. And of course, two you'll meet for the very first time. Today, I'll have the Reverend Dr. or Elder Vicki Johnson, who you've heard from before. We've had her on talking about sisterhood, sacred sisterhood, and more. And we, our conversation felt incomplete then, because the thing is, she has become my family over the years. And so there's so many things that we could talk about, from God to goddess to greatness to this to that. I mean, like, it could just go on and on. And then you'll hear from Dr. LaCara Foster, who will also be joining. And you will hear from let me back up. Dr. LaCara Foster is actually also still standing, teaching, preaching on weekly, and she's standing in her gift as a psychic medium. So these are people who really, we are talking about the integration. The integration of God, the integration of your gifts, the integration. But sometimes it does mean that you have to deconstruct. You have to deconstruct the old fears, the old paradigms that taught you how to be afraid. And then we'll have Dr. Jerome Malsby, who is my colleague for the both Hillside International Truth Center, but also Hillside University. Whereas I served as provost, he served as the dean of transpersonal psychology, where I can, proudly, give homage to for the doctorate that I received as well. And of course, there's you. You are key in this. So before we, begin, before I bring them on board, I want to share. Hopefully, I can do this right. I don't mess up something, because I really want to show this clip of a few things that I want to use to frame this conversation, because people are talking, people are having new conversations, and I want to explore a few of those conversations to frame this, because I talk to people who have spiritual gifts all the time and have been afraid of them, have judged them, have casted them aside, or been casted out, because it's supposed to be done in a certain way. So hopefully you can see my screen. I want to go to the first one, who I had the pleasure of meeting brother. Let me see, make sure. Let me, let me get it on here. All right. Here we go.
Deafening. And they started scrambling. Well, no, I mean the word, because the Bible, like God has always spoken through his word. I was like, yeah, I'm just saying though, humans were here and connected to God before any of these scriptures were written. So how did we as humanity connect to God and hear from God before the Bible? Well, yeah, the spirit, we heard through the spirit. I was like, yeah. And we hear through the spirit today too. You've replaced the spirit with the Bible. And I said, you got to understand, the Bible is a cultural phenomenon. The Bible is a collection of writings from a particular group of people during a particular time period in the world. And they're writing about their personal experiences with the divine. So when we're talking about the Bible, y'all are coming in here with these basic assumptions that everybody thinks the Bible is the inerrant word of God. That is not my belief. I can't box everything there is to know about God in this book. So yeah, my faith and my spirituality includes this book, but it's not limited to this book. So how do we hear from God before we had a Bible? Y'all, the silence,
That's
the
how it
uncomfortable silence at that table was deafening. And they started scrambling. Well, no, I mean the word, because the Bible, like God has always spoken through his word. I was like, yeah, I'm just saying though, humans were here and connected to God before any of these scriptures were written. So how did we as humanity connect to God and hear from God before the Bible? Well, yeah, the spirit, we heard through the spirit. I was like, yeah. And we hear through the spirit today too. You've replaced the spirit with the Bible. And I said, you got to understand, the Bible is a cultural phenomenon. The Bible is a collection of writings from a particular group of.
Okay, so you got that one. I'm sorry, I'm talking and multitasking. That's one of them. But I just want to keep on framing this because people are having conversations that are important. You'll hear from also a dear brother of mine who is a shaman now. We'll be hearing from him soon as well. Okay? I'm gonna keep going. I want to say people are having conversations.
Gospel music and realize how sad and depressive most of it is. Like people just expounding that they don't feel power, so like out of my hands into yours. I went on a deep dive the other day. And I realized there's something like to me that's genuinely immature about religion at this point. Because really what it is, it's like a lot of people who cannot face the fact that life is very, very difficult to manage and to try to understand why we're here and try to make the best of it and try to become people that we can be proud of in such a dark space, tainted by this idea of goodness and religion. So that's a conundrum for everyone. But I can't really take people seriously anymore who are religious, like even on any like low level, because you're holding something from generations, like thousands of years of generations of oppression, and you have carried it all the way into this modern time with you, and you're still using it. It's decaying, and it's very obvious the way that it's being carried out. It's not working and it's not real, and this is not making you feel any better either. And you're just sitting around allowing problems to grow around you, fester, mold. You're being covered with a parasitic weed and you're just waiting for someone else to come and save it. And you're hoping with this power of prayer with you all together, you'll be able to change it. The power is you all speaking up together and changing the world, not just uttering it into the sky and hoping that something else will handle it. It's just so deeply irresponsible at this point. And it's hard to even have discussions with you because I can barely take you seriously. I'm just looking at you like, oh my God. It's embarrassing too. Like, I'm just like, it's mortifying. Oh, God's doing, he's working through this. He's working through Trump. Like, what? Like, I can't listen to this anymore because I'm an adult.
Okay.
That's
Here's
good.
another one.
Go ahead.
That's
I'm
good.
sorry, Pastor.
I want to add this in because the question did say something about after you've lost respect for your parents. So I don't know how you lost the respect or what happened for you to lose respect. But I wanted to add, so we're talking about the scripture that says honor your mother and father, but it also says parents don't aggravate your children.
Okay, so I just wanted to put in a mix, a healthy mix in of conversations that are happening. So we're not making this up. There are conversations that are happening in you, and I want to bring before you my first of all my esteemed sister, colleague, friend, elder, Dr. Vicky Johnson.
Hey, hey, hey.
Welcome to this conversation
That was great. I
that was
loved every
good.
single clip. Yeah, especially starting with Christian, because
Yeah,
I have been asking that question for years to
yeah.
pastors as a woman in ministry. And I do it now just to mess with them because, as he said, I can never get a straight response. How did people connect? How did our ancestors connect to God before King James wrote the Bible? How? Right? If Romans 10:9 is the only way to God, if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart, then you shall be saved. What happened to the people before those words were written? I ask that all the time and often encourage people keep asking questions
Hmm.
because the curiosity is what is going to guide you through that journey. And they're
Yeah.
valid questions. And anybody that resists the questions, I think does so from a place of fear
Hmm.
and from a place of resisting the dismantling of their belief system,
Wow.
right? So
Woo,
this is
you ready?
great.
You came in ready. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was just having this conversation because at the end of the day, it's about personal responsibility and your faith. And now more than ever, we are witnessing not only the colonization, but the gentrification of our faith as the Black church. And so these conversations are important to have if you are going to have any capacity of power,
Shay.
right? And self regulation and growth and
Yeah.
maturity. And lastly, of impact. So this is the season where those of us who have been deemed the underdog and the outcasts and the outliers are now coming to the forefront because everything that has happened in our lives up to this moment has prepared us to lead in this moment and to really walk out the anointing of Issachar, which is to have an understanding of the times that we live in, to know what people ought to be doing. And so I welcome this opportunity. I think this is a powerful conversation. It's a necessary conversation. And we can't be afraid of the conversation because every generation, as we have seen, gets wiser, right? And they're coming with questions. The do as I say, not as I do, and don't ask me any questions. That generation is gone
Absolutely.
in the Black church, right?
Absolutely.
And in church with Black people. Let me say it that way, because then, yeah, what is the Black church?
Right.
Um, it's all the things. Like every time I say something, then my mind is like coming with another question. So I don't even know if you asked me that, but I
No,
I,
I didn't,
I
but
really
I love
enjoyed.
that. I love it. I love it. I love it. Listen, I want to get Dr. Lakara up here. She come back on screen, Dr. Lakara, so I can introduce you and bring you up. First of all, this show is so powerful. I'm not surprised that there was some challenges with whatever technicalities. This is my sister from another mother, probably the ancient mother. We have a connection to find out. We got a connection to all these people. But when I tell you this woman right here is walking fully in her anointing and her calling, she is both an active preacher, but a psychic, owning it. Okay. Like can read you and who's walking with you. And so I wanted to put before you people who are also standing in their truth and in their gifts, because people are mystified sometimes that that what you in a church. No, I ain't in a regular church. But here I want you to meet other churches, and I'm gonna get my brother also here on the stage, because I know that his time is limited as well. Dr. Jerome, who is Malsi Oluo, who is coming in the room, who is someone I also love and adore, who is doing the work outside in the fields, particularly with men who don't oftentimes talk in mixed company. And so we want to have a balanced perspective also of men who are asking questions. So Dr. Lakara is known as Lakara with the gift. So if you all don't know each other, I just want to introduce you
Good
to,
to meet everybody.
Nice
yes,
to meet you both.
Meet you.
yeah. So Dr. Lakar, so thank you so much for coming and joining us. And Dr. Tina is shouting you out in claiming you in the comments.
Love her.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you stood fully from Christendom preaching into your gifts.
That is so good. That's such a good question. And thank you for having me. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, right?
I
And
did not
so
know that,
I
girl.
am
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
born and raised, yes. And so I tell people, of course, being from New Orleans, this is kind of like all in our heritage. It's all in our
Yes.
our family. It's all in our lineage. And so for me, it was not a big deal to say, oh, okay, I'm a medium. I communicate with loved ones who have passed, because there's other people in my family who have other amazing gifts, if you will. And so, of course, but when I joined the church, it was just kind of like, yeah, like what is this? Oh, this is a witch. This is all. And I'm like, what y'all, wait a minute, like what's going on here? I went to school to get my doctorate, and I had an opportunity to specifically do work around this gift and what it could look like in the modern church. So of course, when she talked about like what were we doing before King James wrote the Bible? He began writing it in 1604, and I believe completed it in 1611. But prior to that, there was no mention, no derogatory mention of psychics or mediums in the Bible. But of course, when he got his opportunity to do so, that's when it was included. And so for me, it's just this is who I am as an African woman, or as an African American woman, with all of who we are. I was born with this gift, right? And we said, God gave me this gift, and God gave me this gift to be able to help people, especially when it comes to the mediumship part. There are a lot of people who are grieving, and people get stuck in their grief, and they can't move from that grief because they're worried about mama, and mama's on the other side, and mama comes through and say, hey, you don't have to worry about me. My soul is fine, right? And gives them that little extra push. But it's been an incredible journey, right? One that I wouldn't change. I know a lot of people usually try to see that, or believe that these things like being a minister, being a preacher in a Pentecostal church, and being a psychic medium are in conflict, when they're actually complementary, is what I tell people, right? Jesus was a medium,
Okay.
right? That's
If they only knew, Jesus really was a mystic.
yeah, absolutely.
And he
Jesus was
was
a
a
mystic, yeah.
rebel, a rebellious mystic at
Yes,
that. They didn't
yes,
accept Jesus. The Pharisees and the
yes,
Sadducees
yes,
did not
yes.
accept Jesus. The Jesus that they have packaged to us is the one that they use to enslave us. And
Yeah.
so it's amazing to me that people who worship still are under the spell of their
Mm,
captors.
yeah,
And then
absolutely.
when you question it, you become the enemy. But anyway, I'm not the one that needs to do all the talking right now. And so Dr. Lakar it just told you she's the psychic medium. She embodies that. And I want you all to put your questions in the comments, especially if you're working through your own reconstruction, or maybe you're still in deconstructing. People tell me all the time, especially when you come in and start doing the work, that you're still holding on to some old concepts. And so I want to talk to you all about what was the one that was the most challenging for you in a moment. And I just want to say that Elder Vicky does singing bowls. She's doing singing bowls with the Christian women, honey.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And there
Right.
was a time when that was frowned upon, right? So, and Dr. Jerome in the house, Jerome in the house.
Greetings,
This is
my
this
twin queen sister.
Yeah, Shay. So Dr. Jerome, his resume is extremely long, but he is a therapist. He is working in the field of anger management. He's working with men, doing and all types of others. He's training coaches and creating other professionals in the field of transpersonal psychology. But he's also a minister. And so, what has your journey to from deconstruction to being fully integrated been, Dr. Jerome?
Give thanks for greetings, everyone. It's a pleasure to see everyone, and we know that like minds always attract one another, right? So we had no choice but to respond to Dr. Latanya, right? But great question. Well, I don't know how much time we got to tell this story. No, I'm just kidding. It was interesting. It began when I left Connecticut and took a chance on going from the East Coast to the West Coast, right? Going from one total cultural, which I found out now, cultural experience to another. And so at that point, I was raised in the Baptist church, the typical Baptist church. And as a young person, there's just always something that sit right with me, something about hearing the word and then seeing the hypocritical action behavior in the parking lot, so and those kind of things, right? And just my idea, something spirit was always touching my heart that something was not quite right for me. Certainly, as young people, the foundation was necessary. But what I found is that was just a precursor to us finding our own way and finding our own spiritual path. So that's what happened with me. I something about the traditional ways just didn't sit right with me, as I said, and I sought after another way, right? So I found myself, to be honest, rebellious at first, glad to get away, and just live life and be curious about what's ahead. So during that journey in college, I chose psychology and sociology, hoping that would be, some pathway to find out more answers. Although I went to a Catholic Jesuit school based on scholarship, for athletics. But what I found there was the actual controversy between Catholicism and Baptist was my opening awareness. Mm-hmm. How we have all these different practices, but yet they both are still misleading us, for me, in this guidance of the spiritual awakening. So after that process, that's when I began my own journey. I decided I was going to find my own way to honor God, to find my higher self, as it were. So that was the beginning of it. And fast forward, I ended up in Georgia years later, and I was introduced to transpersonal psychology through a trusted relative, and began that course. And once I hit that's like, this is it. Mm-hmm. This is it. Transformation, right? Wow. Through another awakening of language, of it's okay to question, and start reading material that had other ideas, other perspectives around spirituality besides the Bible, mm-hmm. Knowing that, and I tell you, what Spirit talked to me and told me, what, let's seek to write the Book of Jerome. And so some folks like, wow, that's
good right there.
Right. But Jerome, Matthew, Mark, all they were individuals, they were having human experience like we are today. Yeah. So it made sense for me to start that journey writing my book, and understanding, using those influences, those certain things about human behavior that's consistent, but yet as the Christ conscious told us that we are to do greater works. Mm-hmm. That message for me, okay, let me find out what's going to be my greater works. Absolutely. Greater works. And so that began my journey through transpersonal psychology, through my life lessons. And it's really been my foundation, right? To really writing this book, rewriting my story based on what I was given as a story, and to individualize my story, And so from that point on, I've been excited about spirituality. Mm-hmm. I've been excited about to be eclectic in my understanding about spirituality, to not be locked in on one path, because there are many paths, as we know. And so I allow myself to, whatever path that I'm introduced to, what's in it for me? What can I draw from that message, those messages? So that led me into the work that I do, working with individuals who have had substance abuse and treatment issues, been incarcerated for many years, different ages. So I've had that wonderful experience of being around, as we say, the least of these in those terms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that opened the door for, this is my purpose. This is what I'm here to do, right? To give my own life experiences, my own course of studies, my own understanding about spirituality, and to be able to share that respectfully, and I tell you, it's nothing like uh, giving a message to a person who seems to be lost or discouraged, particularly in our community as African Americans. We all know that story. And so I was, directed to work with men specifically because, well, y'all know the story about us and all the misinformation about us. Some earned, some unfortunately been out there. So that experience has changed my life. It's changed men that I work with, their lives based on their new decision, their new thought process. With my encouragement, there's so many stories to talk about that experience as well. Also, with my own practice, working with couples, with children, who God said, I know you want 18 and over, but I have news for you. You're gonna work with everybody I sent to you.
Oh, wow. Well, I want you to hold that. I want you to hold the theme of incarceration and addiction because there are psychologists who've done studies that said that religion is as addictive as the strongest opioid that we know of. It's considered an opioid. And so I want you to think about that as I go back to Elder Vicky on what was the most challenging crossroads for you in your own personal deconstruction process?
Leaving people behind. As Dr. Jerome shared, I grew up in a Baptist church. I'm originally from South Florida with a very, very, very strong Native American heritage. So my great grandmother was a Creek Indian, and the other great grandmother is a Cherokee Indian. And so a lot of the traditions and rituals and practices were just inherent, like passed down. My grandmother grew all of her food in the backyard, right? We walked around barefoot. Dr. Akari, when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old in my neighborhood, my friends were calling me psychic because I was seeing things and saying what I saw that hadn't happened yet. So being gifted as a child made me an outlier as a child, very misunderstood as a child. And as I kept connecting those dots, I was leaving people behind because I was growing forward and growing up into new information, growing forward into relationships. And God knows when I met you, you just blew my life up. Latanya. Yes, ma'am. You need to try this. You need to go to mastery. Just all the things that you introduced to me. But to me, that was the gift of following the dots, right? Of what I knew internally and finding a safe space to be able to say what I saw, to share what I felt. But I would say the greatest challenge was just leaving people behind. It felt very much like a Joseph experience, right? Having to be the called out one in my family, going ahead of everyone, living in a city and state, and the majority of my family is back in Florida, so becoming comfortable and settling in and getting grounded in who I am and operating in that unapologetically. And as has been said, when you see the results of your gift impacting and helping others transform and transmute pain into power, and when you see that, there's nothing like that fulfillment. And there's nothing like that affirmation and confirmation that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and that I'm being who I'm supposed to be. The results speak for themselves. And I've just learned not to try to persuade or convince anyone. The results speak for themselves. I don't have to defend who I am. I don't have to defend who I be or what I do. Just look at the fruit that has followed my life and my ministry. So it's not difficult anymore. As Dr. Jerome said, like minds, like hearts attract one another. And, you know, I found my people. We may be scattered, but we're connected. And so that is what gives me life and helps me continue to be who I am.
Whew, my goodness. I asked the outliers in the chat to drop a O. They were dropping O's. I asked the black sheeps to drop a B. Where are the weirdos? Where are the psychics? Where are the seers? Where are the empaths? Where are the clairvoyants? Where are the clairsentients? Where are the clairescients? Where are you? Because you are the ones who are oftentimes in hiding because you're so afraid of this conversation because people made you afraid. And so this is an opportunity. This is the season where you got to come off the fence. It's not going to be good for your mental health to stay on the fence. You know better and you don't do better. You don't stand in what you know and you keep going back to comfort zone. So Dr. Lakara, I know you mentioned New Orleans and you're so right. I mean, New Orleans is a special place because, honey, I forgot to introduce. I'm on this panel too. I forgot to talk about, but I want to lead in by saying, you know, Catholicism in New Orleans is not like Catholicism everywhere else. And so, like, even when I was in the Nation of Islam and I went to the Black Catholic Church in New Orleans, I was like, I don't know, I might have stayed Catholic if I had come through New Orleans, because there's a blend of culture. You know, there's like St. Aug, even to go to St. Aug and see the Black saints. Like there are people in this chat who have not seen that church, have not been to a church to see those images. Like in New Orleans is a special place.
Yes, it
is. But still, there's still religiosity and there's still fear of embrace. In fact, I think that the people of New Orleans are like the people of Haiti, that until they embrace their magic, that it will always be an energy that is so ancestral that's proverbially whipping their asses, if I might say. So for you, was there any challenge though, being a psychic and being and I mean being an out psychic too, like and being a preacher?
I wouldn't say in New Orleans, no, because I live in Atlanta now, so I'm from New Orleans. That's home for sure. Challenges for sure, not my own personal challenges, right?
No, of course.
It wasn't my deal to reconcile, right? But just like Dr. Vicky said, when you're standing in your truth and you're standing in your openness, you give other people an opportunity to do the same. And so even, you know, once I came out, if you will, as a psychic medium and a pastor, there were others who, you know, were able to do the same, who were able to say, you know, I'm a seer, or I have these visions, or I'm an empath. And so then what I began to do is to teach from there, right? Teach what does it mean to be a psychic, and also, you know, in the church, or how can you use your gift in the church, or how can you operate in both without feeling conflicted? Because the conflict, I've never felt conflicted about it. And I think honestly, a part of the reason is because I didn't grow up in church, right? My mom and dad did. I feel like we went a couple of times, but I wasn't indoctrinated. You know what I mean? So I didn't have to hear, oh, this is wrong, or this is evil, or this is demonic. Like that just wasn't my story. And so, and much like Dr. Vicky said, also, I remember going on my first radio interview, and as I'm walking in, I'm hearing the Holy Spirit say, "You are never to defend this gift. You can demonstrate it, but you are never to defend it." And so I've never had to defend. Now other people defend it, right? So other people may say, "Oh, I've had a reading, or I know it's real, or I know, you know, this was my experience," but I don't defend it, right? I can just show up and demonstrate it.
Wow. I love that. I love that you bring a perspective of not being indoctrinated to this conversation. I started out, you know, by saying that. So I grew up basically both Catholic and Baptist, and how I did that was my mother let my father decide to have me baptized as a Catholic, but so I would go to church, to the Catholic church with my sister, or go to church with other people. My mom didn't go, but I would go to her church. So I would leave the Baptist church, maybe get some donuts or not something, and then go to the Baptist church. So I feel like it was a divine setup for me, because I didn't even know I was being made bilingual at the time.
Mm.
Oh my God. Thank you, God. Like, to be able to go from one to the other. Now, sometimes I had judgments about both, but
Yeah.
especially the shouting and the different thing. I was a kid. But what that did is it allowed me to have a relationship. I've always been in love with God in that way and called to whatever I was doing. And I ended up in at Southern University. Shout out to Southern University Jaguars, right? Um, SU. And so I went to Southern, and that's where I start questioning, hearing different things, and exploring, and studying, and reading. And that's when a light bulb really came on for me. I didn't even know that I had gifts. I was around so much judgment that I think that I dulled mine down. I literally just in the last 5 to 7 years, maybe, since I've been in Atlanta, still standing fully in my oracleship. It would be people like my sister, Elder Vicky Johnson, who would see it and call it out and push it forth, and being in the company of those who could see it and not allow me to hide it. So, and then I went on to the Nation of Islam. So imagine my family, the horror of my family, that I didn't pick the Catholic Church. I didn't pick the Baptist Church. Here I go to the Nation of Islam. And now going on, leaving that, even that I had to deconstruct, because I realized that I was addicted to, in my mind, religion. I was just trading spaces. And to really have a relationship with God meant that I had to free myself from all of the heaven, hell, right, wrong, good, bad, all of the things that I was told not to look at, and that type of thing. And literally, it has been a consistent rebirth for me personally. I think that probably was the bigger crossroads for me. So I just wanted to share, as a part of this panel too, that when I talk about rebirth, I've had many. And now to be a Lukumi priestess and a practicing minister in a metaphysical space, a trained metaphysician, right? And doing therapeutic solutions. I know that there are so many people. There's people in the chat who were in my hometown judging, and now they're rebirthed. So, Dr. Jerome, when you think about religious addiction, like, what do you see the correlation between the addiction that you've worked with substance abusers and those who are addicted to religion?
Yeah, absolutely. I think how I would term that is those being overzealous in the religion and what they're reading, and those who are only being told what it is and not having their own experience, or not willing to investigate on their own, read on their own, study on their own, and just go and just be told and just follow directions as were, right, and not seeking to find their own experience. So the men that I deal with that are coming out of incarceration, that have a religious background, some are aware of that, and quite frankly were turned off by that, finding out in some conversations, right? Because there was something in them that knows more than that, right? And based on the psychosocial environments will dictate how they travel through that. And so, but based on the metaphysical approach, and the decolonization approach, it really serves them, and it strikes their interest, because I think we all have had our own experiences, but there's something that we all experience that just doesn't sit right. And so what I find with giving them new information, new opportunity, again, I tell them that I'm not here to save you, right? I'm here to inform you and give you some options about some other thoughts, new thought, which is not new, but reincarnated thought, right? To give them an introduction to some other ideas and possibilities of the power within them.
Yes.
So of course, guys, that's my moniker, ignite the power within. And so when we talk about that, that's a conversation that particularly African American men we don't have that kind of conversation in the barbershops, in sports, and those things, right? So So introduce them to another way of thinking, another way to process, to investigate. I find that it turns the corner for them. You mean I have some individual power? I'm a co-creator. I can do things based on my thinking, based on my belief system, based
Mm-hmm.
on my intentions. All
Mm-hmm.
the words that we use in metaphysics gives
Mm-hmm.
a whole other identity of who they are. And what I
Mm-hmm.
find is male and female, we don't know who we are. We don't know the power that we have. We don't know the power that we've been given to change our lives. Even when we make choices that seem not to serve us, but they do serve us because they give us lessons to make
Mm-hmm.
new choices. And
Mm-hmm.
so, giving them a non-punitive approach about spirituality, know that you're not going to hell. You've been incarcerated. How close to hell do you need to be, but not having your freedom being locked up? As we call it, the bathroom, right? That's our little ebonic name for being incarcerated, being in the bathroom, that one room.
Wow.
So knowing that if that's not hell, man, so
Right.
giving a whole new script for them to rewrite their story, to do some internal investigation about the information that I share about change and about learning from their challenges and their experiences gives a whole new opening door to a spiritual experience.
Ashe. I want to take a moment to acknowledge Dr. Lakar. Someone in the comments prompted me because I didn't see it. The algorithm didn't show it to me, Dr. Lakar. But congratulations on your induction into the board of preachers,
Thank
and that you
you.
are still a soul that is willing to come and have conversations
Yes,
with us. Um,
Oh,
you
thank
absolutely.
know
you.
what I mean? Your sister was going to be here, but we just had some technical poofahs. Is Dr. Anika Wilson Brown, who is a part of our sacred sister circle.
Yes,
So
yes,
it got to her too late, but she was
yes,
going to be a part of her, which I am a daughter
yes.
of Union Temple Baptist Church as well. Yes, I'm
Wow,
a spiritual
wow.
daughter. Yes, her
Yeah,
father.
we were inducted together at the same
Yes,
time, so we're in the
yes,
same cohort. Yes,
exactly, exactly.
amazing.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I call us leaders of the new school
Yeah,
when it comes to this, and it has not been easy. And
yeah.
so when what I'm glad it has been for you though.
Well, and even with that, I've been on this thing around like at some point, as African American people, we have to stop trying to deconstruct that theology, right? And spend more time reconstructing our own theology, our own African spiritual practices. Because I think we do a lot of trying to, and I understand, like, when you've been beat over the head with certain things. But I just think like if we could move quickly away from that, we could really get back into what does it look like for me, and doctor, I can't see his name, I don't got my contacts
Dr.
in here,
Jerome.
Jerome. One thing that he's, and I said the same thing, like we could all write our books, right? Because I believe that religion is really about, we're reading about other people's stories and other people's experiences and how they experience
Yes.
God. But spirituality is about what is my experience, right? And that's a whole book that we can write ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
stop trying to like really kind of reduce our entire existence to those 66 books, because there's so much more as African people for us.
Ashe. It is so much more. It's who we are. We're actually reading the book in our private community. Tony, if you can put the name of the book so I don't mess it up, but The Conjuring of America. I believe it's matriarchs, mermaids, and something else in the title.
Okay.
And what it is, it really reads like a documentary of who we always were. We always
Yes.
were seers and medicine women, and many of us in our family, as Dr. Vicky just said, we were exposed to it, but they didn't always tell us in protection of us. Do you come from a line of spiritually gifted seers, Dr. Lakar? And what would you say to someone else who is standing in that gift and is afraid of it?
I actually do on both sides of my family, my mom's side and my dad's side. We had an aunt, her name is Aunt Elday, and she passed several years ago. But I remember as a kid, like, 'cause they lived in like Mansur, Louisiana, which is about 3 hours north of New Orleans. And as a kid, like people like from all over the country would come and see her. And you know, we didn't really, we kind of like, you would hear things, you'd hear your mama say something, hear your daddy say something about it. So you just kind of like put the pieces together. So I didn't really know until I was like grown what that was, but it was people coming to see her because she was a seer. And she would be able to tell them about their marriages or their life or, you know, healing them from sickness and stuff. So it absolutely runs on both sides. And I believe when you say like, you know, telling people about not being afraid, it's what our souls came here to do, right? It is the agreement. This is what we said. This is our yes. And a lot of times people are living with anxiety, living with depression, living with these things because they won't honor their yes.
Mm-hmm.
So they're stuck in jobs that don't serve them. They're stuck in relationships that don't serve them. They're stuck at churches that don't serve them because they won't honor their yes. And so me, you know, and I'll say this, right? I remember I got laid off from the school system, right? Because everybody, we've all been there. It's like we know there's more to this, right? And I
Yes.
got laid off from the school system, and I, you know, I was just kind of trying to make ends meet. You know, I was doing some real estate. I was doing, you know, I became a professor, all of these things. And I do some readings on the side. And I went to see a tarot reader in New Orleans. Shout out to Malika. And she's pulling cards and she's pulling this about 2017, 2018. And she says to me, she says, listen, I don't know what this spiritual gift is that you have, but it's the only thing that God's going to support you doing. And after that, it was like, well, that's the only thing I'm doing. So I let the real estate license go, the teacher certificate go, all the things. And I just became tunnel vision on, okay, God, if this is it, then this is it.
Listen, you don't know this, but your girl here has a whole I have a whole year-long series on your yes, your sacred
Yes.
yes. I have a
Yes.
whole teaching on saying yes to yourself. Like that thing you just said just moved through me. That's like, and like we can't make this up. That some of this stuff is just happening live as you all see it. I knew she was kinfolk in the from the ancient mother
Yes.
immediately. And sure enough, it's been confirmations all around. So when you said that about saying that yes,
Yes.
whew, that felt that. I
Yeah.
really, really felt that. Thank you
Yeah.
for saying that.
Yeah. And I'll say this last part. I won't take up too much more of the conversation. You know, I tell people like don't get caught up in the titles, right?
Right.
Because the gifts predate language. All of our gifts predate language. Like before there was language, there were seers and psychics and mediums and all of these things. And then the human beings decide which word we like, right? Which words we don't like, which ones we align, you know. But I'm like, all of these gifts predate language. Like this is who we are.
Ashe. Well, I want to hear from all of you all again, but the comments is going off. So, and I love it. People have I did see a question early on, Dr. Jerome asking if you worked with boys. Um, and so I just do want to be able to talk about a little bit more about our men because um, women are easy and susceptible to falling in love with church, and the pastor of the church becomes it's so much of a guy that they will disrespect their husband oftentimes and relegate him to nothingness. It's a huge issue in many relationships. So I did want to push in and a little bit before you talk about any work you do with boys about coupledom, like and what you see as a rub that breaks down marriages and relationships in terms of religion and religiosity. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, because when you think about the teachings of the Old Testament, and you have a lot of our ministers that we grew up with, they really focused on the Old Testament, and women were relegated in a small space or no space when it came to leadership in terms of religion / spirituality. So one of the books that that we go over in my uh, master's degree in transpersonal psychology, master divinity, is we talk about the feminine and masculine energy. And what I find is that men know nothing about the true feminine energy from our ancestors. They know nothing about that. And so therefore they go by what they've been told by a masculine society. I've been very blessed and fortunate to where I allowed myself to listen to women, to learn and to grow. And my mother was a dynamic teacher in that area. So, for me, with that understanding, I know where the misgiving is when it comes to to those relationships, because on both sides, the abusive nature that's been relegated to our society between men and women, and the lack of knowledge about the feminine energy. So I talk a lot about that, in terms of helping our men get into their emotional selves, to give some identity about emotions, and about the power of our emotions, and what does that do for us? How does that direct us? So yeah, I do find that as a very important part of what I do, to give new information about the feminine and masculine energy, to give a deeper understanding about what that means, and how we to address that, and to honor our queens, and so I think that's a major part of the relationship experience, is that we're going off of old information, old traditions, and it's a vicious cycle that has continued through generations. So my role in helping that is to give a deeper understanding about the feminine energy, and at the onset of since the beginning of time, and how we've been misinformed about that. So therefore, learning how to honor and or respect women, is a major part of what I do. And I think that over time it makes a difference in relationships,
Wow.
particularly the particular group I serve in terms of domestic violence.
Mm.
I've been working with male perpetrators for over 20 years, and seeing that is the undercurrent of all domestic violence, is how a male sees a woman, right? Grant there's certainly there are women perpetrators as well, but at large it's majority men, right, in our society, and they're geared in that way to respond to their emotional selves, the lack of emotional intelligence.
Well, I gotta challenge that, Dr. Jerome, too. I know that there are men, and it definitely, the patriarchy feeds the toxic masculinity tremendously. But I do want to ask a difficult question that perhaps that you could speak to. I don't know that if it's religion that gives permission to the abuse that men also experience through our mouths. And when you talk about domestic violence and that type of thing, and it's not popular to stand up and speak to that, because we've also gone so far to the left. Do you
Yes.
see that as well?
Oh, absolutely. The emasculation of manhood wreaks havoc on male psyche, and the fact that women don't realize that, and I deal with this a lot, because I hear the first response, Dr. Jerome, you weren't there. If you was there, if you'd have heard what I heard, if she would have said to you what she said to me, you would understand, right? And
Mhm.
so that also about our sisters emasculating men, some intentionally and some not, don't know, because of just learned behavior. So
Mm.
yes, that is the other side of it. It doesn't still make it okay,
No, absolutely.
but you're
So
right.
so
And women,
save any comments, anybody that's
yeah,
watching and looking
yeah,
for a reason.
yes,
I'm
yes,
not,
sir.
that wasn't a pick me question. That
Yes,
is a
sir.
question that we of accountability on both sides, because we've become a
Yes.
toxic masculine too in feminine bodies.
Yes, absolutely. There's been past music out there. I don't need a man, and all these other things that go out there that people lyrically, and it becomes in their subconscious. They're singing it all the time and experiencing it. But yeah, it is. It's something that I've experienced in the agency that I contract with about that. We've
Hmm.
been the poster agency to talk about that. About if
Hmm.
we're not healing the whole family, we're just focused on the effect and not the cause.
Yeah.
And so I find that it's the family unit, and
Yes.
so certainly it takes two in all situations. It's never one-sided, right?
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
you raise a great point, and that needs to be spoken to. And I think needs to be more training for even victims of domestic violence, to know what their role that they played in it.
Yeah.
And certainly, because I teach that to my men. I said, look, whatever went on does not give you the right to put your hands on anybody.
Yeah.
Bar that is no excuse for that, but because of learned behavior, because of lack of emotional intelligence, and because of lack of, and based on what religion has give the okay, even back in ancient times, where there was called a rule of thumb, right, where men had the authority to beat and kill women as long as the item that they used was in the circumference of your thumb,
Oh,
right?
wow. I
And
didn't know
so
that.
yeah, and that's where the term rule of thumb came from.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so that it's just been generational, the cycle of that type of violence, of that not honoring And I like to use the word honoring, not respect. I prefer to use the word honor. We know words have power, right? And
Yeah.
so we think about being honoring ourselves in our relationships of whatever your choice is at this day and age, right?
Yeah.
Is where I think where we need to really step up in terms of spirituality to address this idea about feminine and male masculinity and femininity, and what does that really look like? Because our ancestors, certainly there's been a historical ancestor from where we come from, but again, the Christ conscious told us that we were to evolve
Yeah.
and do the greater works, and so emotionally in relationship, we have not been doing at large the greater works that's required through a spiritual perspective.
Okay. I want to get to some of the comments, but I want to ask a really, maybe a difficult question, or maybe a question that's necessary, um, Elder Vicky, because we've had many friends who have been on the fence and hiding, who are said, like, I can't let my congregation know that I know this, or I read this book, or I study this, or I can't really tell them how I feel, or and certainly some of them probably couldn't even have a me at one time in their pulpit talking about juicy. But I say friends meaning extended circle, not necessarily anybody in our immediate circle, but we know that that's a reality for a lot of preachers as well in terms of teaching the truth. And here you are, standing fully in soul wealth in the way that you see it. And Elder Vicky is also a former pastor of women for many years. So Vicky, how do we what do you see as a challenge or an invitation even to those who know but don't tell?
Hmm.
Good question.
Really, that they'll be frustrated until they come into agreement with or alignment with the assignment on their lives. I love that agree with God quickly so you can have peace and good will come to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was somewhat constrained into alignment, meaning when I was not talking, sharing, hiding, I started feeling out of place. I didn't have peace. It was like, this isn't working for me anymore, because I came from a I wanted to say, I thought of this earlier, I was very free in my gifts as a child, very free,
I share.
very free.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I became a young adult and joined a Pentecostal church and started hearing all the preaching about how my gifts were demonic, and, that's what silenced me. And our mutual friend, acquaintance, brother Kirk Nugent, I remember he wrote this poem, I Need You to Remember.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I started remembering.
Oh my God.
And the more I remember, the more constrained I am to be in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention one of my great grandfathers, it was a medicine man, right? My mother's grandfather was a medicine man. So when I started remembering and coming into alignment with who I am, the light started emanating from me, I'm sure. And those who were curious, quietly curious, can I ask you a question? In my DMs, calling me, and having those conversations, started coming to me. It magnetized me. And what I find is that the more I shine the light, the more I just be the light, right? I don't shine it. I just walk in it and just be the light. They come to me. Like I don't pitch. I don't promote. I think Dr. LaCara said it. People find me, and I am just open to who comes to me with questions. I had a call yesterday. Somebody asking me about, sound healing and sound baths. They called me, asking, well, somebody said that was demonic. I said, well, it may be for them. It's not for me. And it's not for you.
Yeah.
So it's not our responsibility to convince or persuade anyone. The gift is what it is, right? The calling, the assignment is what it is. And I'm called to who's looking for me. That's who I'm called to. Who's looking for me.
Mm-hmm.
And open and excited about it. So for those who are in hiding, you know you're in hiding when you can't find your peace. You'll be uncomfortable. And the more you come into agreement with your gift and the calling, the more peace you have. And you just move forward. I've been in this space here recently where the clarity and understanding of, big things in my life are happening in small spaces,
Mm,
and that my influence and impact will be more visible than me. And just agreeing with that has
mm,
given me another level of peace as, I go into this season of my life, this sixth decade, right, that I'm blessed to be stepping into. And I'm okay with that, coming into, my grandmother's season, literally and spiritually. um, I have a 2-week-old grandson, and spiritually, I'm not, I'm
child,
not, not
my
looking for the hustle.
my godchild.
Yes, your godchild. I'm not looking for the hustle. I am looking for where I am called to be and
That's right.
being okay with that.
But Elder Vicky, isn't it? Dr. Vicky, doesn't it feel good? Girl, do you remember the tables that we sat at, the ones we left and the ones we wasn't invited to? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, I've been misunderstood all my life, right? So that was familiar to me. So when I found this place of peace and agreement, I was like, yeah, I like this space better, even though I'm more alone, or the crowd or the circle is much smaller. The peace is unmatched, right? So I'm alone a lot, and I'm okay with that.
Mm,
Compared to all the sisterhood circles and things that we've come out of and through.
yeah.
Now it's about walking in alignment and walking in agreement, shoulder to shoulder, with those who are my people, right? Who I don't have to
Mm,
perform or
yeah.
convince or constrain, right? Or be limited in who I be. So that's my response. I hope I answered the question, because I
My
got the
goodness.
lawnmowers outside and the interior renovations going on this side. Like they're okay. I'm glad. So I was like, "Woo!" I'm trying to focus here.
No, no,
Good.
Um,
Thanks. Good.
we
Thanks for
don't
saying
hear. In
that.
fact, when you said what you said, I thought about, I was gonna go to the comments, but I just gotta go to what I'm hearing, because I was thinking about Dr. Lakar on this one. When those who have spiritual gifts, do you see a pattern of for the lack of a better word, of persecution as a part of the rites of passage to standing fully in it? Because so many seers and gifted ones and were black sheeps of their family. So many gifted ones were the ones who spoke to the generational patterns or curses in their family line. So many of the gifted ones are the ones who I have seen, who really have had to deal with a lot of betrayal and rejection. Do you see that pattern in many people who come to you, Dr. Lakar?
Actually, yes. And I think it's so interesting. I remember in like 2017, a friend of mine had taken me to see this lady. She had went to our church for a long time. She's an older lady and she had stopped going. But she was a seer as well. And she took me to see her, and we went to go visit her, and she said to me, she said, those people in the church, they're gonna talk about you. And I was like, talk about me? Like what? That just didn't even make sense for me, right? And she said, but she touched my ears, she touched my eyes. She said, but you're not gonna see it and you're not gonna hear it.
Mm,
And so when it all came out, I was just doing my thing and being invited to be on television and radio and magazines and helping people and all the things. So about 2 or 3 years had passed, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, "Yeah," he said, I've had to get a couple of people in the church together about you." And I said, "I don't understand, right?" And he said, "Yeah," he said, "They wanted to kick you out of the church." I said, "They kicked me out of the church?" He said, "There had been meetings, and he said it was just an uproar." I knew none of this was going on. I knew not, and I think there was such a level of protection, like really early on, that when this woman said you're not gonna see, because I don't, maybe if I had seen it or heard it that early, I don't know, I don't know how that could have really kind of threw me off the path, but I didn't see it, so it allowed me to grow stronger and stronger and stronger in the helping of people, right? And so I didn't, it was kind of being persecuted from afar, if you will, right? So they were like, yeah, there were people making videos and blogs and didn't know about any
Wow.
of this. Yeah, yeah,
Videos and blogs.
just all the things, right? And so I do think that there's a certain level of persecution that we will experience, right? And I think that especially if we are saying that we are Christ minded, then a lot of us are going to have the same experience as Christ, right? Or as Jesus, as that consciousness expands. But I just think it comes with the territory. And I think if you are solid in your yes, I always say I don't read the comments, right? I don't read the comments, because reading the comments to me means that I'm looking for confirmation or I'm looking for affirmation. I'm already sold out on this thing, right? So it doesn't matter to me like what people say or what people think. And I think like reading the comments are like, yeah, do I need to see people, agree, or people, doesn't matter. I'm on the journey, sold out.
Okay. No, that's
I
right.
love that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I want to get some of the comments. Thank you, because that was so powerful. There are people who are actually feel in the comments. One sister feels like she's actually losing her child to a very religious community right now, and she's free, but her child is going in a different direction. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's opposite. The parents aren't free.
Yeah.
Free, and the child goes in a different direction. So there are other people who have left the church. PKs are in the church. If you're a PK, shout, I want to shout you out. There are those who have left the church and hate to hear any gospel music, Jesus. Some of them to get on my case and like, "Ooh, you get too churchy." But see, for me, I'm a translator, so I can go, I can take and I can go and worship at a church that does not necessarily believe like me, because I can translate it, because I've studied and shown myself approved. I can go chant
Mhm.
with the Buddhist monks because I know the chant and I know what it means. I can go dance with the Akan and the and in the Lukumi tradition. I can go somewhere to the Baha'i church and be able to do it because I know God for me. I'm not looking for it outside. So therefore, when we have to translate all the time, those of us who have studied and shown ourselves approved, we have to do it. It's the people who are stuck that can't. So,
Mhm.
so we have to do it. But anywho, I want to get to some of these comments in here. So I think I saw a few questions. If your question gets moved over in any way, repost it. I just want to post some of the oil that's coming up. Tony says that when a woman frees herself, she leaves the gate open for those coming behind her. I give thanks. Ashe, Tony. These are, I'm doing the favorite frames, Vicky. You know about this. Demonstrate but never defend. Okay. That was a word, right? Michelle says, I wasn't going to say it, but my granny Alfreda Reese from New Orleans was a Catholic and took me to Baptist church. Okay, now see, maybe they were setting us up all along. Chantel said, dull down all my life, shaking it off. My goodness. Okay. Tony says, now I understand why I needed to leave my small town. I needed to expand my mind and open my heart to the fullness of God. God took the limits off. Okay, now. All right. Any questions? Oh, wait, I got to catch this from Tony. She said, I was so addicted to religion until I worked in a church.
Mm.
I've done that. I've done that too. I recognized that I was worshiping the people in power and not God herself. Thank you, God,
Yes.
for the detachment. Okay, now.
Mhm.
All right, all right. We haven't even gotten into God as a woman, right? Like, so that is, I think that's gonna free so many people up. But you'd be surprised, Dr. Jerome, of the people, women who are offended by God as a woman. So
Yeah.
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 Um, so more shout outs to the induction. Um, Karen, the glam mother, says to think that with all the Creole culture that we heard about Louisianans, they would forget their roots. We all thought they had different beliefs. You want to speak to that, Dr. LaCara?
I think it's much of the same. I think it's like anywhere you go. My dad was raised Baptist, my mom was raised Catholic, but I still feel like their loved ones were still kind of doing things in the background, right? My aunt, who I spoke about, she was a devout Catholic, but she was still doing readings, right? So I think that there was that religiosity piece there, but just as we've always done as African people, we found a way to maintain parts of it, and sometimes they didn't have the space to talk about it the way we have to talk about it. A lot of it was done in secret, it was done in the dark. Now we got podcasts and we got books and we got all the things, right? So they were having their own beliefs and still practicing their beliefs, but a lot of times they just didn't have they didn't have the freedom to do it like we are getting an opportunity to do it.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. If there's any questions, put them in. I'm scrolling down. I'm coming. I'm coming. Um,
Dr. Latanya, if I might say,
yes.
what comes to mind listening to also, I love this phrase, people without a knowledge of the history is like a tree without roots. And I believe that's a major, major piece with us across the board, male and female, is that we've been suppressed with the truth. The truth has been suppressed from us, and even now it's even resurged as suppressing our history about our role in this country and before. So I do believe, again, it goes back to us learning who we really are is a catalyst of all that we do, is redirecting one's consciousness about the reality of who they are, where they come from, whose they are, and all those things that we say. But there's power in that, to re-identify oneself as a man and a woman, and
I,
realizing that it is the yin and the yang of creation,
I say,
that we're all necessary. So focusing on who's, the feminine versus the masculine, that focus has been an issue for centuries, right?
it
And,
has.
and so, but I do believe, as a man like myself who's open to the realities, are okay with that,
Yes,
information,
I agree.
and it's the balance of, it's the universe is in order, and so the creation was of order, right? And so,
It's funny you say that. Did you see Kurt Franklin's interview where he had the young rapper on there, and they darn near crucified this young man for it? Now, did he have some arrogance? Yes, but what's his name, y'all? Help me
And
out.
NLE Chopper.
NLE Chopper.
Hmm.
Isn't he from Louisiana too?
I think so, actually.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he was talking about an experience that he was having with God. And
Hmm.
he was challenging all of the other older men at the table in some ways. And at one point, he said he had a problem with, he called Jesus his brother. So they
Hmm.
clipped that piece to say that the young rap actor who checked him said, "Read it again."
Hmm.
And Jonathan Majors had checked him, but he was right, but he was outnumbered at that table.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely correct. And that's the whole point of that was the epitome of religiosity versus spirituality sitting at that table. Like that brother is saying, I had my very own experience with God. I shut the world out. I shut the noise out. I began to hear from the divine source myself. And they're steadily trying to tell him, no, you need an intermediary.
That's what they said. That's what they said. And even if they knew it was true, and Ray J at one point got up and walked out. I mean, it was just I can't
Yeah.
even say what
And
I
I
want
and
to
I
say.
think that kind of speaks to like really asking the question. And I always say, like, if you many of them probably have never had an experience with God,
yes, yes,
right? A
Not
lot
for
of them
real.
they're having a wonderful church experience. They're having a wonderful religious experience, but that's not the same thing as an experience with the divine.
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
And if
absolutely.
they had someone in that room would have been able to say, "Oh, I know what you're talking about, brother. I too know. You understand? I know what that feels like."
I think Kurt has had an experience, but he will not
Talk
jeopardize
about it.
his
Oh
brand.
yeah.
He is
Yeah.
not going to jeopardize his brand.
Yeah.
So
Well, based on what came out with him in terms of pornography years ago, was an insight that but you can prance and praise and all those things on the surface, but what goes on behind closed doors is the truth, or
Yeah.
where you sit and what you think and how you believe and your so yeah. So that for me, I think
you got to
that
watch that interview, Dr. Jerome.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
I,
was
I
it was
will. I
powerful.
will.
It
I
was a
didn't catch that.
men's table, and it was they almost they dismissed him, and if he had had just a little bit of support, they would have heard what he was saying. But he was standing 10 toes down on what he believed. But I do want to put this out here really quick. The questions, the question to Dr. Lacard: do you work with women experiencing a lot of grief? To contextualize this question, Michelle is a sister in our community who just recently lost her son to violence.
Wow.
In fact, I
Wow.
think it's just a few days fresh
Oof, Jesus.
of burying her son. So the fact that she's even something so healthy is working in you, my love, that you are even able to sit here and still hold a space for your consciousness in this conversation and in others, the way you've been showing up. I just want to acknowledge you. If you are still in the chat, and hopefully if you're not, you'll see the replay. So the fact that you asked this question, I just want to tell you that something so healthy is working in you. And I want you to give yourself a lot more credit than you possibly do. So, Dr. Lacar.
Yes, absolutely. To answer that question, yes, I do. I work with people who have lost loved ones and who want to try to reconnect with loved ones to see, to get some healing, some closure, and some peace. And I would love to gift Michelle a reading. So if you would make sure, if she's not on the line anymore, please make sure that you get her my information, and we could get her set up as early as tomorrow for a reading. I'll make some
Okay.
time. I'll make some room in my schedule.
Wow. Wow, Dr. Lacar. Thank you. What a gift. I will scroll down in a minute to see Michelle confirm that you are still here. What a gift. Thank you. Um, I want to keep going. Karen says, unlearning is simply turning towards what you need to know and not just deconstructing that it keeps us in a place of anger about the lies. Well, I disagree. I think that unlearning is literally studying what it is that you no longer believe or know and why. Because what happens is a lot of people leave the church, get to your point where I do agree, they get angry, but they don't know what they're standing on anymore. So, and it's easy to have the foundation ripped from under you if you don't study and show yourself approved. And what I mean by that is if you no longer believe in heaven and hell, then what do you believe in now? Or what do you know now? If you no longer believe that that premarital sex is a sin, or you no longer believe in sin, then what is guiding you now? Because and hey, I have no judgments if you need to explore that and make mistakes with that and redefine that and that type of thing. So I understand what you're saying. Deconstruction doesn't mean that reconstruction, recovery, rebirth, revival is not necessary, or revisiting, coming full circle, because now you know another way to see it. That's what the metaphysical studies are. You are studying beyond the literal meaning that you were programmed to believe into the metaphysical, above the physical, above the literal, above the chronology. But how does this apply to your chakras? How does this apply? Where is astrology hidden inside of the text? This is the journey of the metaphysician, and everybody doesn't choose that journey. I respect that. I understand that. But oftentimes we don't do any type of therapy for the traumas that we internalize. And we do that in our lives in many places. We get away from the abuser in the family, but you never got any therapy for the molestation, for the rape.
Yeah.
And I run into it all the time of people who just move on and they don't ever do any type of therapeutic work or see the value in it. Dr. LaCar, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to thank you for having me on. I have to run.
Okay.
Yeah, I have like five. My phone is like blowing up with like readings I had earlier. You know,
Of course, of
it
course,
has
of
been
course. So,
a. You
so you
already
can
know.
find, just tell everybody your Instagram and all of
Yes.
that. Yes.
Thank you for having me. First of all, this has been an amazing conversation. I just said myself, I was like, I can't go back. I can't wait to go back and see the replay, because you guys have dropped some amazing gems on here, seriously. And this is such a necessary conversation.
Ashe.
So thank you, and I honor the work that you are doing in this community. For those that are looking for me, I am Lakara with the Gift on all platforms. That's LAKARA with the gift. I mean, Facebook, Instagram, website, all the things. And if anybody's looking to book readings or have questions, all the things. So thank you, Dr. Jerome. It was a pleasure meeting you. I think Dr. Vicky is probably
Yes.
already logged off. This was a
No,
pleasure and an honor to be.
she dropped off. I think she's trying to get back on, but yes, thank
Gotcha.
you.
An
Yes.
honor
Okay.
to be a
Yes,
part of
thanks.
this
Pleasure to
panel.
meet you,
Yes.
Thank
Dr.
you all.
Peace and
And
blessings
Dr.
to you.
Jerome, before I go through all of the questions, Dr. Jerome, you want to just tell people how they can find more about what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Well, they can go to a TLC_Institute on Instagram. We're building that process, getting more information about this journey of being a master life coach, which identifies more than just the core competencies of coaching. We go much deeper for an individual to do work on themselves. So certainly can reach out there. And I do have to go as well. I got a 2:30.
Yeah.
But this is I hope that you bring me back. I think having this testosterone in the call really helps. I hope that it does. It gives your sisters and your queens here an opportunity that there are some of us who get it,
Yes.
who are involved in a way that is not challenging, and that we do believe in the feminine energy at its core.
Yes.
But yeah, it's been a
And
great
do you
discussion.
work with boys? You did. I don't know if you got a
Yes,
chance.
yeah, I do. I work with boys. In fact, I've just been offered a meeting today to do some anger management with young men. I've done some work with young men in Seattle with the Seattle Cares movement there, the National Cares movement with Susan Taylor. New York, I've done work with them. That's been life changing for me. And now I've been looks like I'm going to be doing that here in Atlanta. We're working with some boys, but I do have, in terms of my practice, I've had work with families, blended families with young men, with that whole unique experience about blended families, a whole other conversation that
Yeah,
goes
but
on.
we'll have you back. We'll definitely
Yeah,
have you back if you all agree that we want to talk a little bit more about blended families. We definitely can do that. So
yes,
we
yes.
thank you, Dr. Jerome. We will,
Thanks.
yeah, see you next time. All right, so I want to thank my guests for Dr. Jerome, Dr. LaCara, Dr. Vicky for coming on to continue to share and to drop. As you can see, everybody has sessions and things. Any one of us, you will be in good hands. So let's see. Doctor, I don't know what this means. Dr. Latanya, we got to move down the road quickly. What does that mean? Tell me what that means. Okay. Leaving church. Leaving church, I felt so lost. Spiritually seemed so foreign until I began to remember. It was a slow walk, quite lonely. Can anybody relate to Tony's comment that it was slow? That it was, it was one that was challenging. Dr. LaCar is going to watch this and see, give that thanks for you, Dr. LaCar, from those who know you. Yes. Oh my goodness. So Michelle, you did see this. She said, deep bow to you, sister. That's the spiritual warrior's way of saying thank you, gratitude. So I'll put you in touch with her. And yes, and people are sending you love, Michelle. We as a community, we've been sending you love and light. We've been loving on you, even if you aren't in the room. You've been in our prayers and all of that. Dr. Tina said there's a difference between encounter and experience. Oh my goodness, Dr. Tina, you should have been on the panel. You got to say more about that. Tony said it's fear to unlearn what we was fed versus getting in my kitchen and cooking it myself. Oh my goodness, look at that. Yes, I've had men come tell me that he met God for himself in dark rooms alone. Yeah, how about that there are some people who are from the streets that have more of a relationship than people who are in the church. People who are in the streets sometimes look at how we treat each other in church. In fact, I think I saw a comment from Tony said that she said when she sees the word sister circle, she's running in the opposite direction. And so, welcome to the conversation. Tammy Moore said, relationship versus religion. Absolutely, that's what we are all about. Yes, yeah. He said, in what's his name? NLE Chopper, something like that. He said, if God is our Father, then Jesus has to be my brother. I mean, what's wrong with that? In New Thought, we do say that God is Jesus is our elder brother. So Megan says, how do we lovingly support truth telling to encourage our sons and daughters to get out of limited religion without pushing them further into indoctrination? I think when Elder Vicky said, be the light, I don't know if that was helpful. Be the light, be the light. And people will be drawn to the light. Be free. People will be drawn to your freedom, especially when you hold a space of non-judgmentalness and such. So did I catch everybody? Did I catch everybody? Dr. Tina says, slow. Chantel said, this has been powerful. Dr. Latanya with an IA. All right. Jasmine said, amazing conversation this afternoon. Much needed. Thank you all. Looking forward to listening to the replay. All right. Michelle says, you offering me this gift is an answer to spirit. Something told me to just listen and be still to this whole message is for me. Oh my goodness. What a blessing. What a blessing. And Dr. Jerome, when you come back, you're getting love as well. So it is, I have a book for those of you who are interested in continuing and to the Grandmother's Point, the 12 Steps to Religious Recovery, a workbook and a guide to do your own work, to show yourself study and show yourself approved. Because again, many people have gotten on their journey of exploring other things. Perhaps your classroom is a workshop. Perhaps your classroom is going out in nature. Perhaps it is you, all the taboos and things that you were told not to do. Maybe you do have to do them in order for you to find God in them. That's why if you can't find God in your sensuality and your sexuality, I don't know what God you serve, because you can't have senses without God. So how could they ever be condemned? So that is the juicy road. I appreciate all of you who've added to the chat. Mina says, always happy to support these transformative conversations. Love you. I love you right back, my love. I appreciate you adding to it. And spiritual Dr. Afi, we got to get you up here. You don't have the indoctrination, but we possibly could do a whole show on the dogma and the indoctrination in African traditional religions. So this is not to single out the church conversation, the mosque, all of these can be inserted in here, by the way. I didn't get a chance to say that earlier, but we are not leaving out these other traditions. It is religiosity is transferable. You can become religious about being a vegan. You can become religious about your 12-step recovery. We talked about people who still identify as addicts because that's the indoctrination that they now espouse. That's the thing. I'm not saying it's negative, but yes, you can become a religious zealot about anything. It's not just church. The church conditions us to be that way. So spiritual Dr. Afi, we got to have you in here. So he says, Ashe, be the light, but also don't require nor force others, those you love, to embrace the light you become. They may not be ready, and it's okay. That's right. That's right. That's absolutely right. How many of you have been the light and nobody in your family can see it? So, Come on now. Yes, the 12 steps to religious recovery. I'll have the link in the bio. Dee, thank you so much for for confirming the conversation. And I will also have the link inside the portal. Woo! Ooh, we have the conversation be front and center. Yes, yes, yes. So again, we closing out this show on an amazingly high note. This is a great season to have these conversations. Next week, we'll be talking about genealogy and good genes. Chantel says, thank you, Dr. Afimaye. Because yes, he's absolutely right. You don't have to force your light down anybody's throat. I don't care how many years later. A lot of times I'll say this, my husband and I talk about this all the time. A lot of people in your family cannot accept your light or your assignment, even if it saves them. When you stand in Ifa and other cultural religions to clean up and do abos and invest money on your bloodline, that they may not ever know. They may not ever care. They may not know what sacrifices you're making because you're the one with the assignment. And so a part of the initiation, the rites of passage, a part of the rising up in the Christ consciousness is the fact that you can take the road less traveled at times and still hold a sacred space for those who do not know better. You know, Jesus said on when he was rising on the 7 last words, they know not what they do. They know not what they do. Sometimes they know in your lifetime, and sometimes they don't. There are sisters, there are people in this community who literally, I have had people call me and have testimonies of the uncles or aunties or fathers that they judged who had consciousness, who took a different path. And they spent most of their life being persecuted by their own family, or ignored or dismissed by their own family. And when they were gone, they said, oh my God, now I see what he was trying to say. So I want everybody to think about, what legacy are you leaving? My husband and I talk about all the time. Some people in our family cannot even hear us until they see us winning and living out loud. Some of us, them can't even hear you unless they see you're able to put some money in their bank account or give them a job, because that's where their consciousness is. And so that's the shadow work, is seeing the shadows even in your own bloodline so that you don't become the shadow. Oh my God. I hope you heard what I just said. So thank you for asking these questions, because we spend far too much time trying to belong, to be acknowledged, to be seen by the places where the wound is still living and not healed. And so that's why we have a responsibility to do if it's not deconstruction for you, maybe it's reconstruction, you in your season of reconstruction. Maybe it's rebirth. Maybe it's reclamation. Maybe it's just living free with no labels on it at all. Whatever it is, do you, boo. Okay, that's what our Reverend Danny says. Danny Stillwell says, do you, boo. Dr. Afimaye says, Ashe, we must also consider that sometimes our family's unwillingness to see our light is because our light exposes their darkness, their wrongdoings, their mistakes, and that hurts them. Now look at here. Dr. Jerome touched on that today. He said that. He said he's seen one thing in the service and another thing after church was over. Come on now. How many people we saw the Peyton play? Somebody sleeping with somebody's husbands or wives, but they were deacons, or they were leading the solo at church. That gets real uncomfortable. So I know we could go on, y'all. This has been rich. I pray that you were lifted, that you were given some spiritual food, or that you do not feel alone, that you enjoyed this shift talk of taboo subjects that meet truth, so that we can continue to invite master teachers in to drop it like it's hot with information with inspiration, but most of all, transformation, which means change the form of what we're looking at, or whether it is ourselves or something else. I love you, and there is nothing that you can do about it. Please join us in the rebirth community. If you are looking for a space to do your reconstruction, come into the rebirth space and become a partner with rebirth, or just come and get your spiritual food on Sundays with us, or come and do and explore reframing and becoming a creator of your own reality. We have a 21-day process that's still open. We just did the Be the Shift challenge. So guess what? Rebirth meets you where you are, and you can move forward on your She Rose journey when you say yes to yourself. I'll see you on the other side. I love you. Ciao.